Good morning, happy Easter, and thank you for joining this online virtual service of the First Unitarian Church of Alton on this fourth day of April 2021. It is Easter Sunday in the Judeo-Christian tradition. I am Robin Berkeley, and I am president of this congregation, and I also serve as a worship associate. The First Unitarian Church is a small lay-led congregation located in Alton, Illinois. Due to the pandemic, our services are now virtual, and past and recent services can be located on our church YouTube channel. We hope to see you at our Castle on the Hill sometime soon, when we can return to services together face to face, hopefully in the next few months. In the meantime, we welcome everyone to this virtual home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope. We are Unitarian Universalists. We begin our worship with a prelude by our accompanist, Joy Heft. If you have a candle nearby, please join me as I light my own and recite our unison words for the chalice lighting. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. Our opening prayer is written by David C. Pohl and is number 436 in our gray hymnal. We come to this time and this place to rediscover the wondrous gift of free religious community, to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and full heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made fair with all her people one. Our theme for this month is grace, and today's sermon is about rising up when challenged. Divine grace is defined as a theological term present in many religions. It has been defined as the divine influence which operates in humans to regenerate and sanctify, to inspire virtuous impulses, and to impart strength to endure trial and resist temptation, and as an individual virtue or excellence of divine origin. For Unitarians, we believe in divine grace through our actions, not through creedal beliefs. So for us, how we walk on this planet, how we rise up when challenged by difficulties, how we treat others, and the expectations we have for ourselves and our community at large, all of these are the ways that we obtain and express grace for ourselves and others. Of course, all of this is embedded in our principles. Number 2, the justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Offering grace and rising up when we see injustice, inequities, and proactively engaging in compassion with others is a great way for us to demonstrate grace and rising up when we face challenges. And number 3, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation. Grace allows us to accept differences and enable people to pursue their own path to spiritual knowledge. We may face challenges when we choose to give people space to pursue their own spiritual growth. Differences of opinion, differences in values. Our actions have to enable others their own path of growth, even if we do not find that path fulfilling for ourselves. Number 4, the right of free conscience and the use of the democratic process. Part of the challenge of living in a democracy is that we may find that we are in the minority on some decisions, that the majority decides on a path on which we disagree. By offering ourselves and others grace, we can sit with that discomfort and still know that people are engaging in behaviors that are not setting out to harm, but are about what they believe is the best for everyone. Assuming positive intention is a big part of enacting grace. Number 5, respect for the interdependent web of all existence. We are all connected. We all need each other, even if we are in stark disagreement on values and political issues. While it is challenging to offer grace to others when that offering is not reciprocated, that is where grace needs to exist. Boundaries are essential, but grace allows us to set proper boundaries while acknowledging differences and still caring for others fundamentally. In the end, I remember a saying from my Catholic upbringing: they will know we are Christians by our love. You will know someone is Unitarian by their actions and by the grace they offer others in moments of great challenge and upheaval. So think about how you can bring grace through your actions over the next month as we embrace this theme for the month. We offer this gentle reminder that this community of faith is supported only by your giving. We need each other, and in times of trial, we need each other even more. I challenge you all to not only consider stewardship to be about financial donations, but to also ask people to donate time and talent to help our church. If you can't write a check, can you donate some time to help clean up and manage the church? Can you volunteer to help clean up the grounds? Can you help make repairs where they are needed? Can you call housebound members who would appreciate a call now and then to know that we still care? Please donate as you can with your time, talent, and or treasure. All are needed for our church to thrive. You can mail your financial gift to First Unitarian Church, P.O. Box 494, Alton, Illinois, 62002. Or you can give electronically by searching for First Unitarian Church of Alton on the Givelify app or via the link on our webpage. As well, you can give through PayPal if you prefer. If you are willing to donate your time and talent, please contact a board member and let them know what you can do to help. Give what you will and what you are able, for you are a generous people. If you know it, please join with me in our offering prayer. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice. Our reading for today is called Grace Under Pressure. It was contributed by Carrie Doubts on October 9th, 2018, on a web page called Connect Women. We all experience pressures in our lives. We feel pressured to perform, conform, and please others. We experience financial pressures, social pressures, career and professional pressures, relationship pressures found in marriages, partnerships, parenting, and more. We want to pin the blame for the pressure we feel on outer situations, circumstances, and/or people. We think we need to take power back from these external forces. And when we are experiencing pressure, it's a signal that we have an opportunity to call our energy and power back to ourselves. We just get confused on how to do that. The dictionary defines pressure as stress, a constant state of worry and urgency. It's a force that pushes or urges. To pressure is to compel or to make someone do something. Ernest Hemingway coined the often used phrase, "Courage is grace under pressure." I wonder if what he meant was that courage is the quality that gives someone poise and a sense that they can handle pressure. Have you ever wondered what separates people who succeed under pressure from those who collapse from it? Perspective. Those who view pressure as exciting, as a fun way to play the game of life by making the stakes higher, tend to win in life. People with a strong sense of ego often thrive under pressure. It brings out the best in them. When we're grieving, our energy levels are depleted. We are not ourselves. We fold under the slightest amount of pressure. Pressure, when experienced without sufficient energy to counteract it, becomes stress, strain, and burden. Pressure is a demand upon us that automatically creates anxiety. It makes us want to withdraw into our shells and never come out. It's common for people who are grieving the loss of a spouse to feel pressured by well-meaning family and friends who offer all kinds of advice. You're likely to hear that you need to clear out your loved one's belongings, keep yourself busy, sell the house, move in with family, move into an assisted living facility, to move on, to fall in love again, to get over it, etc. Sometimes pressure causes you to give in to what is being demanded and make a decision that you may regret later. We usually regret choices we make when we give our autonomy over to someone else and let them coerce us into following their agenda instead of doing what our heart tells us is right for us. How you deal with pressure is a matter of perspective. Sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to get over our grief because we're simply tired of feeling sad and overwhelmed all the time. This is something I hear a lot from clients. However, grief runs its course in its own timing and will not be pressured into submission just because we want to get rid of it. Pressure is a force, and force needs a counterforce to be activated. Ultimately, it is contraction and fear-based thinking. As Peyton Manning says, pressure is an indication that we feel vulnerable and don't know what the hell we are doing. Here's the key. Other people or outer circumstances don't pressure us. Pressure is a feeling we generate inside of us in reaction to stressful outer stimulus. Since it is something that we are creating, we have the opportunity to create something else instead. That is how we get our power back. When you feel pressured, where do you feel it in your body? Typically, we'll all feel pressure in our head, our heart, our belly. I know when I feel pressured, I feel like I'm in a vice. It's like I have to push back just to continue existing. It took me a long time to figure out that feeling pressure is a choice. Grace is another choice available to all of us. Grace is the opposite. Grace is the generosity of spirit. It's a gift from God. It's freedom. Grace is prayerful. Choosing grace means that I don't have to do everything by myself. I can call on spiritual assistance. I can trust everything will be done in its own timing. I can trust myself to handle what's in front of me. I can relax. Are you feeling pressured? Relax. You don't have to buy into it. You don't have to do anything that you feel pressured to do. Choose grace, choose peace, choose freedom. Wow. I got to tell you that the last few weeks have been pretty crazy. And I, first of all, want to thank every single one of you who reached out to me personally and through you friends, supporting me with all the challenges that my family faced with my dad's accident and how well he's doing now. Gosh, got to tell you, it's stunning that he's actually home and laughing and joking and feeling lighthearted and moving about the house and as if, as if honestly, as if nothing ever happened. But as I was thinking today about Easter and about the theme for the month and this whole idea of rising up and when things are challenging, and I think that that's part of our Easter story too, right? Is rising up, with challenges. I wanted to talk a little bit and reflect a little bit about my experience with my dad and sort of what that means for me in the larger context of Easter and what I think about the idea of grace and rising up from challenges and stepping up out of those challenges and moving forward. And so that's kind of where the direction I'm going to head into today. It may not be as lengthy as maybe some of my past sermons. And for some of you, that may be a gracious relief. And for some of you, you might be like, oh, okay, well, but I'm hoping that this will get to some of the key important facts that I really value when it comes to this idea of having grace and strength and courage. So to sort of recap the story briefly, my dad needed surgery. And he has a small nodule, and he needed lung cancer surgery to remove the lung lobe that had the cancerous nodule in it. And he had the option to do radiation at the time, but he decided to go forward with the surgery instead because he thought, it'll be great, gets rid of it. I don't have to deal with radiation and chemo over long haul for treatment and things like that. And the family supported him. But my dad is 82. And there was just this nagging thought at the back of my head that there might be something that could happen. And you just don't know when you hit a certain age, actually at any age, but certainly as you hit a certain age, the possibility of things going south can happen fairly quickly. And I wanted to make sure that I was there, A, to support my mom, B, to make sure that my dad was getting the care that he needed. And just ensuring that no matter what, that they had somebody to lean on to get them through this. And I know that Peg Flack and Laura Perkins have talked about caring for their moms, and what that feels like as a gift and a challenge, right? To care for aging parents. And I recognize that that's where I'm at that stage now in my life where I have to be considering this as an option. I'm the closest and probably most readily capable of providing that sort of long-term care for my parents as need be, given my sister's situation with young kids and with her illness, and then the distance that my brother is away from us, and for my parents, about as polar opposite far as you can get. My parents are in Florida, my brother's in Seattle, Tacoma, and so it's easiest for me to get there and to provide that kind of care. So I got there Friday night, Saturday morning, I think it was. And we talked a lot about, was he ready? Was he scared? He was a little anxious. But, he said he felt really good. And my dad's in great shape for a guy who's 82. I mean, really, he walks, he's managed his weight well. He's on minimal medications, although he does have issues with high blood pressure and some heart arrhythmia things, but generally speaking, no blockages, no major problems. He had just had a major workup on Friday. And so we thought, okay, good. We're going to be nervous, but you should get through this, and you're in great health, and there's no reason why, this shouldn't work out fine. And Sunday, he had sort of stumbled a little bit while he was doing some work around the pool, and kind of lost his balance, and he landed on a Rubbermaid tub of some sort. And we said, "Are you okay? What happened?" And we didn't think anything of it. We figured maybe he just turned the wrong way because he had just had this massive workup on Friday and everything was clear, and they gave him the thumbs up in terms of having the surgery, the following week. So we said, "Are you okay? What happened?" He goes, "I don't know. I just seem to just lost my center of gravity and lost my balance." We're like, "Okay, no problem." That unfortunately was, sort of foretelling, what ended up happening on Monday, um, when he fell and hit the wall. And what the closest we can come to is that very likely what happened was he turned probably a little too quickly and maybe lost his balance, and he moved to the right and he got bruised on his right hand side against a counter that was sticking out, from the kitchen as he was leaving the kitchen and heading back to the dining room and to where his office is. And he hit that, and then that tipped him in the other direction, because again he was a little lightheaded, and he squarely hit the wall, about a 3-inch dent in the drywall is there. And I heard this large bang. I was sitting outside. My mother was sitting outside. She's reading the newspaper. I'm doing grading. And so I hear this giant bang. And I got to tell you that I was maybe inside within about 15 seconds. Took off at top speed, which for me is, pretty fast when I'm in an emergency situation. Otherwise, I'm a giant sloth. And so I came in really quickly and I saw him on the ground, crumpled, and he seemed to be out of it. And then all of a sudden he was out cold, and not just sort of semi-conscious, but like out. And then he stopped breathing and he started to turn purple. And I was not okay with that. And I knew that his heart rate, I couldn't find a pulse at that point in time. So without even thinking, I had been trained in CPR my senior year in high school on what you needed to do in order to make sure that you provide CPR care. And I knew some basics. So I knew clear the airway, make sure that check the breathing, check the pulse, and none of that was working. So I started CPR, and I'm not sure that I did it 100% correct on terms of the pacing and what have you, but I know I kept the blood flowing through his body as best as I could. And the ambulance was there within 4 or 5 minutes, tops. And I was doing CPR 90% of that time, because there were times when all of a sudden it would be like he'd gasp for air. He seemed to be okay. And then he would start turning purple again because he was just struggling. So I kept the CPR going to keep, the heart rate. Turns out that he was having problems with what we call VFib, ventricular fibrillation. And they couldn't get his heart to the atrium and the ventricles to beat in sync with each other, because the atrium has to pump the blood to the ventricle then pumps it out either to the lungs or to the body. And that's just how the process works. I mean, biology major, undergraduate in biology, so this is all stuff that I understood, fundamentally. So when I knew that that things were not sort of going right, so they had to shock him a few times, and we had wandered out, and neighbors came by. We were all there to support my mom. So I went in, noticed that they were still shocking him. I'm okay. There's nothing, we cannot do anything to help him right now. We would just be in their way. We're just going to stay right here until they get him stable. So they got him stabilized. And the shocking was simply just to get those things to work in sync together. And then ultimately, they got him in the ambulance into the hospital, the emergency room right away. A wonderful Adventist hospital in Flagler Beach, right on the border between Flagler Beach and Palm Coast, Florida, where my parents live. Got him there. They assessed him. There was no bleeds. But he was unconscious. He was having problems with his heart still, and they didn't know the extent to which there was any kind of damage. They didn't see any bleeding, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't happen within 24 to 48 hours. So immediately after the CAT scan that they had done on his head, they had to inflate his lungs because I had broken all of his ribs. when I was doing CPR, and then ultimately having to reinflate his lungs because they had collapsed after doing the CPR and what have you. So sort of mixed emotions, right? Because you're hurting somebody by helping them, and that creates a lot of cognitive dissonance in sort of how you think about, am I doing this right? Am I hurting him too much? I'm like, no, you're doing what you need to do. As much as it's going to hurt, it's the right thing to do. So the good news is that they got him upstairs to ICU right away, and they had him on what we call a cooling down machine. And we know, right, all the stories that we hear of young children who, are on the ice, and the ice breaks and they fall into the ice cold water, and it slows down the damage that happens when there is not enough oxygen to the brain. Like, for example, if you're in a drowning mode, and we know it works, and we know that kids can come back. Kids are very plastic brains. That's very elastic and malleable and changeable. And so they've learned through care that when you put people on these machines, it does slow down the damage. It slows down, it allows the body to heal. So that if there's any damage from not having enough oxygen, that coolness, body temperature lowered down to 91 degrees Fahrenheit from a 98.6, right? 91 degrees Fahrenheit, that helps mitigate the damage that might happen to the brain. When we were talking to the ICU nurses, they said, honestly, there's usually one of two outcomes when people go on the ice machine. They said, your dad's really sick and he may come off and have brain damage, which is always possible, and not have his cognition, or he may not even make it off the machine in the first place. So it was challenging those first 24 to 48 hours because we really, truly thought we were not going to have him. We thought we were going to lose him. But the fact that he was alive was huge, and we were very happy about that. So after they had him on the machine cooling for 18 hours, they brought his temperature up very slowly, bringing him back to consciousness. And ultimately, they got him off the ventilator. Then they cleared up his chest tubes. They did all the things that they needed to do around that. And he started talking and communicating, and he knew that Donald Trump was no longer the president, and he was so glad. I mean, it's like all these little things that we had to laugh about, but it was just these wonderful miracles, right? If you want to use the word miracle, or wonderful advances of science that says, yep, everything worked. We did everything right. We were really fortunate. And I was so glad that I was there to be able to do the CPR right away, because that's not something my mom could have managed. My mom is 5 foot tall and 100 pounds soaking wet, and there's just no way that she would have been able to move my 6 foot tall, 200-pound father and did proper CPR to keep him alive while calling 911 and navigating all the things that she needed to navigate. So it was a blessing, if you will, or fortuitous, if that is the term you prefer, that I was there and I was able to help and to get him to a stable place before he even got put on that machine in the first place. So I left, after being there probably almost 2 weeks, and he was getting ready to go to rehab. They got him to rehab the next day, and he was home earlier this week. And he's walking around the house, and he obviously with a walker and with a cane and with the proper support the way he needs to. He cannot go anywhere by himself right now until we know that he's stable and can manage, but he's doing home health care and home support and everything else, and he's rock solid. And it's just, and what I see in him, or what I'm hearing in him, is a lightness and a positivity that normally doesn't come with my father. He tends to be a very serious guy and kind of black and white about things, and sometimes sort of tends toward the Eastern European pessimism that I know I've grown up with. My father's side of the family tends to be, steadfast pessimists about just about everything. But my dad always tries to buck that, right? I mean, he always tries to figure out how we can be better and how to improve himself. And he's really made those efforts to do that. So the fact that I'm seeing him in a lighter way than I probably have seen him my entire life is such a joy, and it's such a gift, and the grace that we have in that in seeing that is just it's I'm so grateful. So why am I retelling the story? And certainly not to just sort of go through and say, hey, this is what happened to dad, but more, what lessons do I learn from this, right? I mean, I think sometimes the best stories, the best lessons come from the stories that we experience. And I want to take you first to this idea of what grace is. And as we've said in the readings and things like that, what it means to have grace. Wow. Being gentle with ourselves and with others, and accepting people where they're at, what they're doing, why they're doing it. And that is, as much as this pandemic has been a royal pain in my posterior, for many reasons and for all of us, right? But what I learned is to have grace and to provide grace and to give myself grace. That's the harder one. Giving myself grace when things are challenging. And the pandemic has taught me to be like, you know what? In the priority of life, this is not a high priority item. So yeah, you blew it and it's okay. And let's fix it and let's move on. Right. So we learn to give ourselves grace when we realize we need to go be gentle with ourselves. We need to be gentle with others. And I think that the pandemic has provided us with an opportunity to learn that grace and to practice that grace. It's also given us the ability to rise up to challenges and to give us opportunities to rise up to challenges that we never thought, we would have to deal with. I mean, who would have thought that we would be 100 years after, the Spanish flu, right? That we would have to go through a pandemic type situation again and having to cope with learning and experiencing different things in life. So I think the pandemic gave us a gift of teaching us how to have more grace under pressure when we're feeling stress, when we're feeling grief. And all of those things are relevant that happen in the reading, right? We've lost people dear to us. We have lost a community. We've lost faith in our government. We've lost faith in our legislators. We have feeling tremendous pressure when it comes to jobs and mental illness and stressors and all of these things. And I think the pandemic did offer us, despite all those challenges, an opportunity to learn how to practice grace. And so I think about this with respect to the story of my dad and the story of what we experienced there, and where do those moments of grace and opportunities for grace come into play. Number one, being gracious to myself. There were so many times, and I was sitting in the emergency room and watching him on the ventilator, just staring at him in the ICU and wondering, did I do CPR right? Did I cause this damage? Did I hurt him so badly that it caused the issue? Now, realistically, I know that's not necessarily the case. And in fact, what they told me was the fact that I got to him within 30 seconds and was doing CPR within less than a minute, actually probably saved him. Because as the ICU nurse said, there's usually two outcomes, and he was the small probability and highly fortuitous outcome of getting off the ventilator, getting off the icing machine, and basically walking out of the hospital in a way that we hadn't anticipated. So I was able to help him and save him. And it's not a point of bragging, but it's a point of just incredulousness that I could do that and I could help him, and that I could forgive myself for any mistakes that I may have made while doing CPR, because even okay CPR, not textbook perfect CPR, can still help and save someone's life. And I think that's really important for us to recognize. The other thing too is, I was a biology major. as an undergraduate, and I really wanted to go to medical school, and I never ended up going for a whole host of reasons. And I used to just chalk it up as, well, the universe, is telling me I probably wouldn't have made a good doctor, and that's okay because I found my dream job and I'm doing what I love and everything, and it's all good, right? I can accept that and acknowledge that perhaps that was just the wrong path for me. But there was always a small part of me that would wonder, could I have done that? Would I have been a good doctor? Would I have been okay at doing these things under pressure? Because that's really what it comes down to. When you have someone's life in your hands, having grace under pressure is the key to successfully helping that person get through that traumatic experience. And um, I came out of that, and all of a sudden I went, wow, I didn't even realize, I didn't even think about what I needed to do. I just knelt down and started CPR and did all the things that I got taught to do. And suddenly I went, you know what? Maybe I would have made an okay doctor. I'm still doing something that I love, but I don't second guess, right? I don't wonder anymore whether or not I would have had the resiliency and the ability to do that job. And I think I probably could have. And it's not like it's a deep regret, because there's very, very little, if anything, that I regret in my life. We all make mistakes. We all learn from mistakes, as we've talked about many times before. But this idea that, I walked away from a career that I thought I wanted, that I realized it was just the right, the appropriate circumstances for me, as it was probably not going to be the thing that was going to be my love for my rest of my life. Um, and that, sometimes, we're given a gift of no, that pushes us in the direction of something that truly we love and we value. But it's nice to know that, probably if I had succeeded and I had gone down that path, that I probably would have been okay. So I gave myself a little grace there too, right? It's like, oh, you would have been okay. It would have been fine, you know? I think about the grace that this congregation gave me, and my friends gave me, and the people who loved me and stepped in every day. And it's like, how are you? How are you doing? What can I do for you? And wow, what a gift that was. The grace that they gave me, to be able to make, the right decisions, and to take away other burdens from me so that I could just focus on what I needed to do with the little bandwidth that I had, to be able to support, my family and my dad and my mom. Um, Students who, the schedule starts, the semester starts, and I had to make sure things were on top. And I had a colleague who helped me, get stuff organized on my class website. And then my students, I reached out and said, you need to know this is what I'm going through right now, and I am doing the best I can to stay on top of these things, but I'm asking for some grace from you, and making sure that you just are patient as I work through stuff. And they were all wonderful, and no one complained, and no one was unhappy that they didn't get what they needed as they needed it. They were respectful of that boundary that I put up, and said, I'm not going to be able to respond instantaneously to things, and please be willing to accept that. So making sure that we put up the boundary, a safe and healthy boundary for ourselves, and provide grace for ourselves and for others in doing that, and hoping that we get the grace from others when we graciously and needfully put up an appropriate boundary about what we can or can't do. My own family, just, the gratitude that I had for my sister and brother, for the work, that was doing for mom and dad, the fact that I had the ability to be down there to support them in that way, and how important that was, for me to be able to do that. And so, being able to, to be that rock for my family, when I needed to, and to, again, to my church family, right? For you guys lifting me up and holding me up and giving me that space. Those prayers mattered. No matter how you expressed your prayers, whether it was through meditation or Reiki, or, actual on your knees, now I lay me down to sleep kind of prayers. Um, all of that mattered. All of that positive energy mattered. All of that grace mattered. because it gave me the strength and the grace to navigate a crisis that was hard. So, how does this pull all together with this idea of Easter, right? And Easter is rising up from the ashes. The story of Easter is Jesus is put to death, fulfilling prophecy, and he is he is nailed to a cross, and he dies, and his followers struggle, right, with the loss, the despair and the loss of this person to whom they had dedicated their lives for upwards of 3 years, following him and breathing in his teaching and really recognizing that um, this was a good person who was doing good things for us. And 3 days later, out of the ashes, rising up like a phoenix, being reborn, rising up out of turmoil and strife, and still encouraging people to take the message that they had learned from him, and not necessarily to keep it for themselves, but to spread that word, to use their actions, to use their values, to go out and to share the messages that Jesus had taught them. And while as Unitarians, we may not necessarily believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ as part of that Trinity, right? And as part of, he is God. We do believe that he was an important prophet and that he had wonderful stories and wonderful things to teach us about what it means to be a good person and to be someone who believes in God, believes in a universe of divine energy. However we want to define that divine energy. For some of you, it might just be, that interdependent web and that source of energy between us. And for some of you, you might believe in a divine being, a divine god or goddess, or gods and goddesses, however we define that. I'm not trying to limit this view of one around a Unitarian belief in God or a Judeo-Christian perspective on what is considered divine. Divine obviously can expand across all those boundaries, and it really has helped this whole notion of rising up out of difficulties. And that's what we saw, right? He rose up from being put to death. He rose up from the difficulties of challenging, oppressors that were in his country of origin. The Romans were there taking over and pushing people to behave in ways that's not what they wanted. Jesus was a rebel. Jesus was a radical rebel who wanted to fight, but he didn't do it with anger, and he didn't do it with terrorism. He did it by proving to them and showing people what it means to have good practices, to loving your neighbor, to loving those who are least in society. And this is where I see how, even if we don't believe necessarily in the divinity of Jesus Christ, I can see how that story informs our ability to be good Unitarians, because we believe that grace is in our actions. Grace is in how we care for those who are at the least in society, how we lift others up. You can hear my dogs barking in the background. I'm so sorry for that, but I'm going to continue talking because they're going to do their thing, and I'm going to give them some grace, and I'm hoping you'll give me grace in return. That Easter story informs us as Unitarians, even if we don't believe in that the Trinity, right, of Jesus is God. There are messages, there are nuggets that come from that biblical story that enables us to live as Unitarians, to love our neighbors, to care for those who need it, and to know that the grace that we give others will come back to us. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now we know, right, from our sources studies, that these come from the Jewish tradition, from the Torah, from the Talmud, from interpretations of, the Pentateuch, right? But we also know that Jesus took these, tenets and brought them to modern day Christians, and to teach us, right, that we need to love each other, to give each other grace, to help each other under pressure. And I think that's sort of where it all comes down to for me at the end, is this notion of what do we do to lift each other up? What do we do to be the role models that we need to be, as Jesus was a role model for all of those other who were his followers? That that people should know, right, when they see us by our actions, that we are Unitarians because we believe in social justice and we believe in caring for everybody, and we provide grace even when things are less than perfect, that we are forgiving of each other when things don't go right, that even if our opinion is the one that isn't followed, that we know that people are doing it with the best of intentions, and that there's a right relationship behind it, and that there is positive intent behind behaviors. And that's what I really want to leave you with. Use this opportunity, use this Easter, use this month as a way of reflecting on grace that we can give to each other, grace that we can give to society at large, even though we may not always agree with other people. How can we rise up out of pain and suffering and still have grace for others, still have grace for ourselves, and to still allow ourselves to be the best people that we can be? And this is what I take away from our Easter story and how that relates to my own life, that we stand up and we be that beacon as best as we can. Thank you. Here are our announcements for the week. Please think about ways you can volunteer your time or talent to help the church. We need everyone to pull their weight, whatever they can do. Every minute or hour donated to help the church is gratefully and graciously appreciated. Please consider how you can share your talent and time with us. Please contact the church office if you have an event or an announcement that you would like us to share via our weekly Church This Week email. If you are interested in receiving our weekly email, please send your contact details to church@firstuualton.org. And remember to join us next week for our virtual service here on YouTube. And now, if you have a lit chalice or candle near you, I invite you to join me in extinguishing the chalice. The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are keepers of this flame until we meet again. Our closing words are from number 704, a reading in our gray hymnal by John Murray. Go out into the highways and byways. Give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it, let it shine, and use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. Amen and blessed be. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Happy Easter.